Thank you again for joining me for Bible study. This week we're approaching the beginning of the season of Advent, that 4-week season where the church prepares for Christmas. The readings for this season I've grouped together into what I call a season of hope. And the reading for this week is from Daniel chapter 6, verses 6 to 27. If you haven't read it yet, I encourage you to pause the video, and a link to an online version of the reading is in the details below. If you don't have time to read the reading right now, that's fine. You can come back to it later, and I'll give you a quick summary of the reading now. The prophet Daniel has been trapped. After rising to prominence in the court of a foreign king, King Darius, his fellow courtiers plot to trap him. They become his adversaries and conspire against him, and he's thrown into a lion's den. An angel appears and saves Daniel from the lions. Then his adversaries, their wives, and their children are thrown into the lion's den as punishment for trying to have Daniel killed. There are a number of terms that are used in today's reading that specify who's involved in the plot to trap Daniel. There are presidents, satraps, prefects, counselors, and governors. The presidents would be equivalent to administrators. There were 3 of them in Darius's court. And the satraps were people who had authority. We know there were 120 of them. The prefects would be what we would term now nobility. The counselors, they had no authority, and they really did just counsel the court and the king. And the governors we would have as the equivalent of mayors. Now Daniel was one of the presidents and missing from the meeting where King Darius writes a decree that forbids anyone in the kingdom from praying to anyone or anything other than the king for 30 days. Daniel, though, being devoted to God's commands, continues with his daily prayers. He put himself at risk by not following King Darius's decree, and eventually the king needs to punish Daniel based on the trap that the other courtiers set. Having risen to a high position in Darius's court, there's a lot that's at risk by Daniel continuing to pray. And this leads us to our first question of the day. What would you be willing to sacrifice to have the type of influence that Daniel had? Daniel wasn't willing to sacrifice his prayer life or his devotion to God. And history is full of people who have sacrificed a lot to obtain positions of power and influence. I encourage you again to pause the video, take a moment, and reflect on what you would be willing to sacrifice to have influence, power, authority over something that is dear to you, something that is important for you. Most of the time we think of faith as something that brings us comfort and protection. In this story, though, Daniel's faith, and particularly his prayer life, puts him in danger. Throughout history, people have been put in danger because of their faith. Jews during the Holocaust, Muslims during the Crusades are two long and well-known cases. Although religious persecution and discrimination continues today. I believe we live in a fairly safe environment here in Burlington. And while the church may not have the influence it once had, I've never felt attacked because of my faith. Being a Christian, serving as the pastor at Holy Cross, has not once put me in danger. This leads to our second question of the day. What do you think it would be like for your faith to put you in danger? If living out your faith has never put you in danger, can you imagine what it could be like for people whose faith has put them in danger? Can you imagine what it could be like to be persecuted or discriminated against because of your faith? Again, I encourage you to pause the video and take a moment to reflect on what you think it could be like for your faith to put you in danger. Once you've had time to think about these questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you didn't catch the questions when they were displayed on the screen, they're also included in the details below this video. Let me know what you think, and I hope that you will join me again in a couple of days for more Bible study.